Ladies and gentlemen, the Bugatti Tourbillon. And please, a big applause for the fastest man on the road, our chief test driver, Andy Wallace. Thank you, Andy. What a historic moment here at the historic Bugatti location in Molsheim, France. Can you believe this? This is a moment that many of us will remember for a long time. During the W16 era, we have called our cars after historic race drivers that are very successfully racing Bugatti cars in the pre-war era. Now, with the new era, we have chosen to have a different approach. The Tourbillon has been inspired, as you will see when you see some of the details, by very high-end watches. Those watches have wonderful mechanical pieces of art inside of them. They're mechanics. No matter if you have a transparent housing on these watches or not, you know that the mechanics inside are beautiful. The highest end of these watches have also a mechanism called the tourbillon, which is a mechanism that counteracts the forces of gravity in order to increase precision. The Bugatti Tourbillon can accelerate with far over 1 G, so it also plays with gravity. A new Bugatti is a very special occasion. But something like this, a completely new one, developed completely from scratch, only comes around every couple of decades. And with this one, today, right this moment, we are starting a new era in this century-old brand. Looking at this car, I'm so incredibly proud of the team that has developed it, giving their relentless efforts and dedication to make it possible. Because what we have embarked on with this project was very, very ambitious. And by looking at it, you see how this team collaborated, how hundreds of people have worked together over years to create this masterpiece. It's a car, and you will see that later when we go more into the details of the technology and the design, that like no other, I just don't know any other example where it feels like it all came from the same hand, from the same person, because everyone worked so beautifully hand in hand. What makes me most proud is that we have executed on all of the romantic and beautiful and crazy ideas that we had at the beginning. Ideas that would have been easily dismissed as too complicated, expensive, or impossible. But as Ettore Bugatti said, nothing is too beautiful, nothing is too expensive. We did not let anyone tell us that we cannot do something or that anything is impossible. Our job is to make the impossible possible for you, our customers. Thinking back at the giants on which shoulders we stand on, Ettore Bugatti and his son Jean, Romano Artioli, Ferdinand Piech, I like to think that if they would see what we have created, they would be proud of. They would love this. Luckily, we have one of them right here, so I will ask him about his opinion in a few moments, so we'll get some direct feedback as well. So this will be a very important feedback, Mr. Artioli. But for me, the Tourbillon and what we have created here, it's much more than a hypercar. Of course, it's wonderful to make these beautiful pieces of art for you, for our dear customers, without which this wouldn't be possible. But for me, this is a celebration of humanity, a celebration of all human aspects, art, technology, precision, materials, everything is inside a car. And I hope that kids today still put wallpapers of such machines on the walls of their bedrooms, just as I did not too long ago, because that also has motivated me to create such things or to work on such beautiful cars, and I hope that inspires kids of tomorrow that they can create such or participate in creation of such beautiful works of art, whether it's a car or anything else what they decide to do in their life. The Tourbillon is again raising the level, raising the bar in every aspect, confirming that Bugatti is at the top of the automotive art, form and technique. It is what a Bugatti needs to be. As Ettore Bugatti said, if comparable, it's no longer Bugatti. You will see this car is not comparable. It is very unique, very special for all the right reasons. On the outside, you see very clearly a Bugatti. So the exterior design has been clearly an evolution, but the whole car is a revolution. It does not share any component with any other car. It doesn't share any component with the Chiron or with the Nevera or with any other car on the planet. Everything is completely new, and you will see some very special things about it. But let's hear first from the design director, Frank Heil, about the design behind the car. Frank.
Thank you, Mate. So how do you go about designing the successor to the Chiron? It seems like a kind of big task, right? The aspect of timelessness is key to us. How do you make a car timeless? For it to be timeless, it needs to be authentic. It needs to tell a story. The story of the Tourbillon is the interplay between speed and elegance. One could almost say it is shaped by speed. Now, we draw inspiration from many things. For example, if we observe nature here, the falcon, fastest creature on the planet, if it nosedives for its prey, what does it do? It tucks under its wings. It reduces its frontal area to pick up speed more quickly. And this also goes together with our observations in now over 20 years in doing these high-speed programs like Chiron and Véron, and now with the Tourbillon, is if you reduce frontal area, it has a greater influence on the speed of the vehicle, unlike anything else. And so the concept of reducing frontal area was also being exercised by Jean Bugatti, who we also take great respect and influence from, with his concept that he called surbaissé, where he submerged the engine in his Type 57 SC Atlantic. He submerged the engine behind and below the front axle to get the bonnet lower, to get the driver lower, to get the roof lower, to reduce frontal area. So that's already taken inspiration from. You will find the concept of surbaissé in this car as well, as we have reduced this car in relation to the Chiron by 33 millimeters in height. That's quite a big job in terms of car design. And that not only does have a huge effect on aerodynamics and the frontal area, but also on its proportions. Now, before we talk about any design theme or line or color, we have got to get the proportions just right. And as you can imagine, if you lower the roof, the wheels look bigger, it's an improvement for the proportions. Also the body posture of this new car. You can see it is raked forward, ready to pounce at standstill, very much like a predator. The Type 57 you see here in comparison, this is how much lower it was, and that's exactly what we've done with the new car. We've reduced its frontal area. Jean Bugatti crafted the Type 57 SC Atlantic from a special magnesium alloy that couldn't be welded back in the day, so it was riveted together in the center from two halves. And ever since those times, the accentuated center line became part of our stylistic DNA. So you will find a center line also on the new car that is marked. It even goes through into the interior. The design DNA of Bugatti is not only the center line, it is also the Bugatti line on the side, which finds a new interpretation into this body side here once again, which is also the physical parting line between the two colors on the two-tone paint scheme. Also, the horseshoe has a new wide proportion, and it is the origin of all the volumes and line work on the front. It is the backbone of the architecture of the front. A radical new cooling and luggage concept also goes together with it. And we have these two, what we call flying fenders, docked onto them, and we're streaming air through underneath the headlights to exit the air in the apilar area, to pressurize the side air intakes. As you know, it's an atmospherical engine, so any bit of extra air pressure that you can ram-induce into the side air intakes will actually increase power. We come to the more sculptural, more sensual, more reflection-based. There's almost no line to that rear three-quarter side panel here, surfaces, which leads us to a beautiful contrast on the rear, where we have these more sensual surfaces up above and the more technical, more fragmented, more aero-driven surfaces down below. And it's this contrast that makes this so appealing. If we come to the interior, This is where digital detox meets the art of watchmaking. We have chosen to do the entire human-machine interfacing between operating the vehicle and displaying information at the driver in an analog fashion. It's completely timeless. We're speaking about authenticity, making it timeless through authenticity. And so we have a very unique steering wheel concept we call a fixed hub steering wheel. As you can see, the airbag and the instrument cluster stay put while the spokes reach around them, and so the driver has an unobstructed vision onto their instrumentation no matter what steering angle they dial in. Also, the instrument cluster is housed in a titanium housing. There's real ruby stone bearings. It's covered in sapphire glass. It is in every way like an exquisite watch. Also, the center console draws inspiration from the art of watchmaking, as it is a skeletonized approach. There's real crystal glass set in machined aluminum. It's the aspect of transparency, like in a tourbillon watch with a glass back face. So you see, the tourbillon is really made not for the future, but for eternity. And with that, I want to hand back over to Marta. Thank you very much.
What a beautiful job Frank and his team has done. But we will now talk more about the underpinnings that made it possible. The technical details of the car that were developed by Emilio Scervo, our CTO, and his team of over 300 engineers who have worked on this project. Some people might think that design is something that you just do in the air, something like a facade on a house, something that you just do on top of a technical platform. And actually that's quite true for many cases, and that's how fake air vents came to be, or fake exhaust, because the designers imagined something that has no technical reason for existing. A Bugatti is completely different. We like to say what you see is what you get. If it looks like aluminum, it is aluminum. If it looks like carbon, it is carbon. And this is also true here. Everything has a function. Every little thing, like what Frank explained, for example, this hovering lights with the air channel underneath it, everything has a reason to exist. So, like no other car before, I believe the technical team and the design team have worked so closely hand in hand to create something that comes like from one person, but actually from hundreds of people who have worked on it. When designing a car, there is usually an interior and exterior design team. Two design teams that work hand in hand to develop what the customer sees from the outside and inside. And then the stuff in between, the technical part, is usually just done by the engineers to fulfill its purpose. It's usually doing its job, nobody cares how it looks like, and just to do whatever it needs to do for the cheapest and simplest way possible. We did not want to work like that. We want the Bugatti to be perfect, even where you don't see it, even where you will never see it. You need to know that the Bugatti is perfection, even where you never look. It's important to us, because we want every piece of it to be perfection. So we have created a third design discipline, which we called the rolling chassis design. So that was making sure that the car in its naked form, like here in this picture, is beautiful as well. And every piece of it, every part you take off the car, the suspension arm, the engine mount, the gearbox, the electric motor, everything has to be beautiful. Everything has to be so that you put it in a gallery, it is like a piece of art. And I guess you might already guess that this is the favorite part for me, for the car, the technical underpinnings that enable this wonderful design. So it all starts with the powertrain. Of course, the powertrain is the most important part, with the going from the W16 to the naturally aspirated V16 and the hybrid powertrain system. As you know, when we started to develop it, we could have gone in any direction when it comes to the shape of the car, to the category of car. It didn't have to be a sports car. Bugatti's history is more than rich enough to go in another direction, but we have decided that for the new chapter we go with a hypercar, and then we decided to also continue with the combustion engine. So going with the new combustion engine was a strong decision, but not only with any combustion engine, we wanted to have the most emotional combustion engine possible. That's why naturally aspirated, but the naturally aspirated engine was only made possible by a very high-tech electric powertrain, 3 electric motors, a 25 kilowatt-hour battery pack, which gives enough power, but also decent all-electric range if you need it, especially to make the car future-proof in case in some areas you will not be able to run with a combustion engine at all. So with the 25 kilowatt hours, you should get a pretty decent all-electric range of around 60, 70 kilometers, even without using the combustion engine. So a V16 is, of course, naturally longer than a W16. As you know, W16 has its cylinders offset. They are not in a straight line, while the V16 cylinders are in a straight line. On top of that, this car has actually more displacement. While everyone went for reducing the size of engines, here we went from 8 liters to 8.3. So this engine is 25 centimeters longer compared to the W16. And then we have a big battery pack and 3 electric motors, and we even have a bigger trunk, and despite the lower cabin, we have the same interior space as a Chiron. So when we started working on this, I didn't know what it means for design if the car just becomes longer because of a longer engine and because of all the other stuff we needed to fit in the car. I thought maybe it's good for design. So I talked to Frank and Achim, and they immediately said, no, just don't make the car any longer. Just try to keep the same length. So despite having so much longer engine and all the other hybrid parts, the big battery and so on, the car is only 2.9 millimeters longer in wheelbase. That's one of the magic tricks that Emilio and his team have done to keep the beauty of it, and even more of a magic trick, the first hybrid car that went from combustion only to hybrid and being lighter than the combustion car, despite having the 200 kilos of battery pack and all the other electric powertrain components. When we go to the top view, you can see how different it is. So in the Chiron, many of you who are using it, you know that you sit quite far away from your passenger. And that's because the gearbox of the car was in front of the engine, so between the passengers. That's why you were sitting far apart, one from the other. And that also means the doors move out and the windows move out, the greenhouse. And here we have now the battery in the middle, in the tunnel, but also behind the seats, structurally integrated into the monocoque, and the gearbox, now an 8-speed double clutch behind the engine with an electric motor in the rear, 2 electric motors in the front. That enabled us to push the occupants closer while still having more than enough comfort, the same comfort, just closer, which meant that the glasses, the greenhouse, is now narrower, and that enabled, for example, this shoulder line here, which we also use for the aerodynamics that are compressed at the front to then go into the air intake of the engine. And you can see that this piece here, this shoulder line, we call it the shoulder, makes the car look more masculine. Even when it's standing still, it's more dynamic. And that's something where you see where design is not just something on top, it's enabled by the technology underneath. It all works together. So because of the gearbox now moving to the back, the battery being more narrow, the seats moving closer, you have this masculinity that we have here. And then, of course, the engine. It's, as you have seen already, exposed. That was very important for us to see the engine and not just any kind of cover. This is the actual plenum of the engine that you see outside. And one of the things that we have managed to do, because for total air resistance, is actually the drag coefficient times frontal area. And as Frank has explained, we tried to reduce the frontal area as much as we could. So the roof is lower, the bonnet is lower, but also the cabin is more narrow, so the frontal area is a lot smaller. So the aerodynamicists wanted actually to close the rear to achieve their aerodynamic targets, the drag coefficient, or to significantly reduce this opening. But we told them, no. You are talking only about the drag coefficient. You are forgetting that you need to multiply that with the frontal area. So we have reduced the frontal area greatly, so we can play a little bit by having some nice things like the big engine opening. So you just see how everything works together. There's no separate piece. Everything works as one concept. But now something very exciting. One very good decision that we did was we started immediately. As you saw this little model that I showed you as the concept of the car, we knew exactly what we want. So we started to develop the combustion engine immediately. We started with the battery. So we have the combustion engine running on dynos for already 2 years. So the powertrain is very mature. And what you will hear now is the actual sound of the engine accelerating from 0 to over 400 kilometers per hour. You will hear how it actually sounds. The video is CGI, but the sound is real. So listen to this. So it's a very unique sound, right? It doesn't sound like a V8, doesn't sound like a V12. It's something on its own, and that's what we wanted to achieve, something unique. And it's actually a very interesting combination. Quite an old school combustion engine, because no turbos, but actually made possible by a high-tech electric powertrain. It's kind of like how the anecdote of how electric cars got killed by the electric motor, by the electric starter, so people didn't have to crank their engine anymore, and that made it easier to use combustion engines. And then this killed the electric car. So the electric motor kind of killed the electric car 100 years ago. Here we have the electric motor saving the naturally aspirated engine. And another interesting thing we saw here was how the instrument cluster works. So you saw on the center part, you have the RPMs going all the way above 9,000 RPM. So you have this 1 meter long crankshaft with 16 pistons on it, spinning over 9,000 RPM. Then you have the speedometer, and you see how far it goes. So there is potential in this car. And on the right, you have the power meter in horsepower. You have 2 needles, one for the combustion engine, one for the electric powertrain. And you basically add up the power of each. So you could see now with full acceleration, the combustion one goes to 1,000 horsepower. The electric one goes to up to 800. So we have 1,000 horsepower from the combustion engine, 800 horsepower from the electric, for a total power of 1,800 horsepower. And all of these movements you see, all of these gears, they are actually moving the needles. So the needle is being moved by those mechanics behind it. Then you can also see on the lower side of the steering wheel the modes. On the left side are the chassis modes, so how you set up the suspension, steering, aerodynamics, and so on. On the right side is powertrain modes. We want to give power to the customers. We don't want to make decisions for you. If you want to drive combustion only, turn a button, you drive combustion only. There is no electric assistance. If you want to drive electric only, the combustion engine will never turn on unless you deplete the battery. If you want the car to make the decision for you, you go into hybrid mode and the car does everything itself. But one thing we'll for sure not do is that the engine turns on and off all the time, annoying you. So. And another cool thing, on the left side, we are displaying the battery state of charge with an analog Swiss watchmaking instrument instead of a digital way. So we talked also about, let's talk a little bit about the numbers. Bugatti is not really so much anymore about numbers, it's about the whole package, but we have to mention them. I will just mention one. The 0 to 400 kilometers per hour is 7 seconds faster compared to the Chiron. So we have higher top speed, we have better acceleration, more power, but the magic trick really is that the car is lighter. By how much, I won't say, because we are still working on some details. It still could go a few kilos up and down. It won't be a lot, but it is lighter than the Chiron, which is, I think, a huge achievement, mostly thanks to Emilio and his relentless push for it, because he made sure that every kilo gets squeezed out. And how did we do that? two things. One is architecture, so the overall concept. So big decisions at the beginning. So going from the combustion engine, from the turbo engine to a naturally aspirated one, you lose a lot of the peripherals that you need with a turbo engine. Pumps, pipes, intercoolers. Then you have less torque going through the gearbox because a part of the torque is being taken care of from the electric powertrain, so the gearbox gets lighter. So the battery is 200 kilos. The front e-axle with 2 electric motors is 82. The rear electric motor is 23, the rear inverter is 11. So you have 300 kilos of electric powertrain, 300 kilos. That's, let's say, added on top. So if you take a Chiron, that would be 2 tons plus 300 kilos. We have removed this 300 kilos from the combustion engine, from the gearbox, but also other parts. So one part is architecture. For example, how the battery pack is integrated very nicely into the monocoque as an integrated part. But then the second part is every component. And here is a wonderful example, 3D printed metal suspension. This is a suspension arm, but also the knuckles, the uprights are 3D printed. And just with that part, with the suspension being 3D printed, we have saved 45% of weight compared to the Chiron. So on architectural level savings and component level savings. And this was also shaped by AI. And now we come to the aerodynamics aspect of it. So perfect aerodynamic shape is the wing. And usually cars are not really like wings. Actually, they are like wings generating lift, but we don't want lift, we want downforce. But if you take a cross-section across the tourbillon, it actually is almost like a wing, the right side down. How did we achieve this? By an ultra-long diffuser. And this is, again, the interplay between design, concept, and engineering. So you see how far up the diffuser ends. But the diffuser only works if it's not at a high angle, if it's around 11 degrees. If it's more, then the air will delaminate from the diffuser and will not stick to the diffuser any longer. So you have to have a very gentle incline. But if it's so high, it means the diffuser needs to start very far. So the diffuser actually starts around here where the seat is. So half of the car is the diffuser, which enables us to not really use a wing, even for top speed. So we have a wing that deploys, but mostly for air braking and for handling mode. But for top speed, we actually don't need the wing, so the diffuser gives us, let's say, free downforce with not so much of drag as opposed to a wing. And it makes the car look more elegant as you need the wing less. But in order to have such a diffuser, we have a less wide engine, a narrower engine. The W16 is very wide, the V16 is long but narrow, which means the tunnels can go left and right of the engine, and even the engine is in an incline. And then on top of that, the diffuser is also the rear crash structure. Usually you would have a crash structure which is hidden away by the bumper, but then you have a big bumper. Here, the diffuser is also taking the crash load, so you have this open rear end where you actually see the rear tire when you are behind the car, and this beautiful light rear design. And that's also how we save some weight. So you just see the interplay between engineering and design. So another beautiful thing that you can see here, please have a look later at the engine. That's my favorite view as well. There's so much more about this car that I could talk about. The fixed top steering wheel, what it took to do that. The seating position, so we have moving pedals. The seat is moving up and down, but the backrest is moving forward and backward, but the seat is not moving forward and backward, the pedals are moving, which enabled us to not make the car longer, one of the things. There's millions of more things that I could tell you about, but we will tell you those stories in the weeks and months to come. Now, I will just give you some more details about the car. We will produce 250 of those beautiful machines, and we will start deliveries in 2026.